Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Uplifting Content Podcast with me, Ione Butler. It's been too long since I've done one, actually. I've had a little break over the Christmas and the New Year, but I'm so excited to be back this year with the one and only Christine Hassler, who I interviewed about a year and a half ago for the Uplifting Content Summit, and she's an absolute joy, so I can't wait for this one. Christine, hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and welcome to 2019, which is crazy to believe. I feel like it was just yesterday that we were freaking out about Y2K.
Yeah, I know. They're speeding up. The years are speeding up, and it's kind of freaking me out. I have this whole theory that is that every day if you go to work and nothing changes, just the brain just sees that as just one day, right? It just kind of clocks it together as a day. And so if you're doing the same thing every day, it just kind of time goes quickly because it's just one day. Whereas if you're driving to work one day and there's like a major road accident or something extreme happens, that day sticks in your mind as something of relevance. And so I have this belief that the more variety and the more different experiences you have, the more the brain sees that as, oh, that day, or that thing, or that thing. And actually 2017, I traveled and did so much that year that actually it felt really long, but in a great way. Yeah. So whereas I think if everything's very same,
routine,
it whizzes by because there's no distinction.
Yeah.
That's my theory of it anyway.
I like it. It's a good theory.
Thanks. So much to talk about with you. I'm very excited. We were talking about something exciting before we recorded it, but anyway, whatever. So to get started, I love for you to share a bit about yourself and what you do with the audience. With the audience, just for some context before we dig in.
Well, my title is Master Coach, and I have a master's degree in spiritual psychology as well. So I combine life coaching and NLP and all that kind of human optimization stuff with spirituality and psychology, which for me has been the best recipe because, life coaching and looking at our mind and setting goals and looking at the present and future is so helpful. But if we don't clean up our past and see how our past is impacting us, sometimes it can feel like we have one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. So I really see myself as a human detective, and I look at what people want and what's in the way. And when we look at what's in the way, a lot of it is decoding how our past has impacted our belief systems, our model of the world, our fears, the way we sabotage ourselves, what we want from our ego and our insecurities versus what we want from our true desires. And I'm sure we'll talk about desires on this podcast. And it totally came from my own life. I didn't wake up one day and go, oh, I want to be a coach. I want to do this. I actually was an agent in Hollywood. That was my first career. And the reason I chose that path is growing up, I was desperately insecure. I was bullied. I was teased. I have abuse in my background too. I was put on antidepressants when I was 11 years old. So I made up a very strong story about being broken, about not fitting in, about being less than. And that motivated me to become a strong overachiever, because as kids, the way we deal with our pain is we find some way to compensate for it. And this is a big thing I teach. I help people identify their compensatory strategies, the ways we've developed to operate in the world, to get love, to get safety, to get belonging, to fit in, that are more compensatory. So my compensatory strategy of choice was, I'm just going to be a massive overachiever. That's how I'm going to identify myself. That's how I'm going to feel like I belong in any way. That's how I'm going to be safe. And it worked, it worked externally in terms of creating results, but internally I was still depressed, unfulfilled, had tons of anxiety. So at 26 years old, my strategy had kind of stopped satisfying me. And I realized no matter what I checked off my list, I still wasn't happy. And I thought the solution was fixing something external. And we all believe that. We believe like, oh, if only I could change this thing outside of me, if only I could change my job or change my body or change my relationship status or change this person in my life, then I'll be happy. We live a very when-then kind of life until we have some sort of spiritual awakening, some sort of what I like to call expectation hangover that makes us realize that it's totally all an inside job. And that realization became abundantly clear for me when I quit my job, went into more debt, got dumped by my fiance, estranged from my family, and had different health diagnoses on top of the depression and anxiety I was already medicated for. So that was like a turning point in my life. And I had been seeing a coach because I had been seeing psychologists and psychiatrists since I was 11. So someone told me about this life coaching thing. And back in 2000, when was that, 2005 or something, it was not a thing. And I saw this lady named Mona, and she was telling me for a while, like things that sounded good, but I wasn't quite ready to implement. But after my quarter life crisis, I realized the common denominator in all those situations was me. And I also realized I had a very victim orientation to that. Like I really saw my life happening to me, not for me. And I was able to shift my perspective, and a miracle is a change in perception or perspective. So I was able just to create a miracle by saying, all right, if I created all this, then I can probably create something different. And that's when I became just consumed with personal growth, personal development, really started seeing my coach more often, got inspired to write my first book, which was called 20 something, 20 everything, for 20 something women going through their quarter life crisis. And from there came the coaching and the speaking and everything else that I do today.
Now, I'm always fascinated to hear how, like, because you said you got into the coaching and then you got into the personal development and everything came from then. But what were the kind of turning points and the growth for that? Because I'm guessing if you're in debt, you've got all this health stuff, you've got all this other stuff. It's not easy I shouldn't say it's not easy.
It wasn't easy.
Okay, cool. What were the steps? Like, what was that process of development?
Yeah.
Like, when did you decide I'm going to be a coach? And, because I feel like there's a lot of times people are in these places and it's like making those steps to get to them, which is kind of good to know.
Well, the key thing that I learned along the way, and this was something my coach was really helpful for, is I only needed to know one step at a time. So when I took my first step of writing the proposal for my book, I didn't know what the next step would be and the next step and the next step. When I was just in, maybe I should write about this, and I'll tell you the inspiration for that in a moment. I wasn't in, maybe I should become a coach, then maybe I could speak, then maybe I could be a facilitator. It wasn't like I had it all mapped out. And this is something that I really love to impart upon women, because women have been so adapted to masculine ways of doing things. And the masculine way of doing things is to have a focus and to have a plan and to have a direction. It's very like directional. But women, we are receivers. I mean, let's just be super clear and think of basic anatomy. We are built to receive. And that doesn't mean we sit around and wait for the universe to pour it on us. However, it does mean that if we stop doing and planning, and we actually sit and we listen to our intuition and we listen to our desires, then from that place, inspired action can happen. And now I am way better at this than I was at 25 years old. At 25 years old, it was more a concept that sounded good. However, I had been so burnt out by doing that I just couldn't do it anymore. And so for me, what it looked like is when I quit my job, I worked as a personal trainer. I wasn't making as much money, but that's what I did to support myself. And I continued doing that after my fiance left. And I decided that I was going to start being more honest with what was going on with me, because I also was really good at, and I still catch myself doing this sometimes, but not as much. And when I do, I try to shift it quickly. I was really good at putting on a mask and pretending I had it together and pretending I was okay. And people would ask, how are you doing? And it would be fine, which stands for feelings inside not expressed. And so I decided, I'm going to just do an email to, and I also had a lot of trauma with females growing up. So I didn't trust women. I didn't have a lot of female friends. I decided one night I was just going to put an email out and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. I think it's called a quarter life crisis. I'm going to host like an evening, like a group chat at my apartment. If you're interested, please share this with other women. And like, I wish I could find the email, but it was like on my Yahoo account from so long ago. And like almost 30 women showed up at my house that night.
Wow.
And that's when I realized, oh, wow, this really is a thing. And I was trying to find books that would help me. And this is another thing that often gives us a step. The solution to the problem we're looking for, if we can't find it, often creating that solution is the best business idea we're ever going to have, or is the best step we're ever going to take.
Yeah.
And so I read the book Quarter Life Crisis, and it was good, but it was more about like, get your career, get your relationship. And I was like, I did all that. That wasn't the answer. Where's the inside stuff? And I was like, well, I guess I'll write it. And so as I was writing the book, I was interviewing a lot of women, and they would say to me, and my personal training clients would say this to me too. They'd say, you should be a coach or a counselor. Like, I just want to talk to you. You ask great questions. You're so easy to talk to. You're so insightful. And I heard that over and over and over again. And that's another way that the universe reveals steps to us, is the things people tell us we're good at, the things we come naturally. Like, that was the next step. And so I started, getting trained as a coach and taking clients. And, the step to speaking was hearing, after the book came out, oh my gosh, like, hearing from people that employed millennials and 20-somethings, how frustrated they were. And so they'd ask me, oh, the 20-somethings, like, you should speak to corporations or you should speak to college students. And so that was the next step. And I started to explore a speaking career. So one thing truly did lead to each other. And I'll tell you, the thing that gave me the most momentum was doing the internal work alongside the external results I was creating. So I was always my best client. I was always a student. I was always had my coaches and stayed on top of my own development, and doing that internal work and working on my own issues of self-worth and self-criticism and worthiness and not enoughness and perfectionism and imposter syndrome, and the list goes on and on.
Yep.
And body image stuff and sexualities. I mean, so much. Working on all of that, like, the more internal work I did, the more my external life would shift as well. So that was a long-winded answer to your question.
It's a beautiful, fantastic answer. And for me, I think it's a very poignant one and necessary one, because everything that you've just said, I wholeheartedly believe, and speak it to other people too, about sort of listening to what comes to you and sort of following your bliss, following what people sort of say you're doing it. And to a degree, I've been doing that. But then there's been a big part of me that has been feeling like, I don't know what I want. I don't know where I'm going. And because I feel that need to have a plan.
Right.
And actually, I have a male mentor who was asking me, Ione, what's your 15-year, 20-year, 25-year plan? I was like, I've got no idea. And then I kind of started to feel like, I was like, oh God, damn, something's wrong here. Like, because I don't know what I want and where I'm going. But actually hearing you say that, again, we just have different ways of looking at things. I'm sort of more allowing life to unfold but just being aware and listening to it and going down those roads that feel right. And then being okay. So that's, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And I think that's what we as women are learning to do. And this is not about making men wrong in any way or the masculine way wrong. And we have both inside of us.
Right.
But now my feminine leads a lot more. Like, I trust my feminine to lead, but because we've been conditioned that the male way is better, faster, stronger, more successful, so many of us have adapted to that way and take that advice because the feminine superpowers have been muted for so long.
Right.
And now we're in this time where we're like, okay, well, the feminist movement was great, but it was a lot of againstness against men. It created a lot of division. And now, how do we bring the feminine up to live in harmony with our masculine, both externally in our relationships with men and also like internally inside of us? And that doesn't mean we can't plan, but my feminine leads. So it's like receiving the information from the feminine, and then my masculine can respond. My masculine can take action. And I've just found that that's a way less stressful way. And like, the number of women who are adrenal fatigue, thyroid issues, hormone imbalance, cortisol levels out of whack is staggering, and on antidepressants and anti-anxiety. So, this way of doing, it may be achieving external results, but internally, are we taking really good care of ourselves?
I don't think so. And I'm glad that you touched on the masculine and feminine thing, because I spoke at an event. There's an organization called FemQ, which is the feminine qualities. And they were very clear that this isn't a woman's event. This is not just for women. This is saying that we have for too long been living with sort of putting masculine, and this is not male and female, this is masculine qualities, like the sort of doing on a pedestal at the expense of all the feminine qualities. And what they're saying is that we need to balance that out. So for men and women to embrace more of these feminine qualities. So as you were saying in the beginning about sort of women needing to tap into their intuition, I too feel like men, it's the same thing for men to be able to listen to that calling and follow what, and just be more intuitive, because that's lacking for a lot of men. But yeah, just more of these energies, these feminine energies and qualities, we all, men and women, need to kind of tap into a little bit more, because they're just, and it's that superpower thing. And what they were saying at this event is, both men and women have masculine and feminine qualities and energies. And if you're only tapping into your masculine ones, you've lost half of your power, right? And so you called it feminine superpower. And I love that, because men and women can now sort of use more of their other qualities. And then you're just a much more fuller, expressive human, men and women. And I really want to make that point, because sometimes these types of conversations, people can think that it's a man and a woman thing. And I don't believe that it is. Yeah,
it's not. And it's not. And I do think if you are a woman who because some women identify as more masculine, whether sometimes that has to do with their sexual orientation. Sometimes it doesn't. But some women are like, no, like I'm a masculine woman. That's just like who I am. But for most women who really identify as a woman and as more feminine, everything's going to flow a lot easier from our health to the results we create if our feminine leads. You know, and then this is another thing I hear so many women, especially single women, go, oh my God, either like the spiritual conscious dudes are too feminine and the masculine dudes have no emotional IQ. Oh, this is my next book, by the way. It's all about like being single and the rise of the feminine time.
I'm excited already.
Yeah.
I want to read it now.
I heard that so much. Like you're so attracted to the guys that like, you know, like are successful and like have it, you know, but in terms of their emotional IQ, their emotional availability, their ability to commit, it's like, and then you've got the, you know, spiritual conscious dudes that call you goddess and put their hand on your heart and like let you cry, but you're like, oh my God, I so don't want to sleep with you. So it's, and then of course those are extremes, but this is just, you know, through my own experience and talking to like so many women at this point. But I noticed that shifted for me, and I see it shift for women time and time again, when our feminine and masculine get in balance and get in their right place. So many women are having that experience because their masculine is too in front. Right. So they either find a man that outmans them, right? Or they find someone who has more feminine energy, because that's polarity. You know, that's how attraction happens. So this is like, so, you know, and this isn't something that is like, oh, let me give you the 5 keys to becoming more feminine. This is a really, for me, the way to letting your feminine lead is a deep process of surrender. Like it's a deep process of surrender. It's choosing to not fear uncertainty in your life. It's like letting yourself be in, you know what? I don't have a plan. I don't know what I'm going to do. And this was big for me last year when I was living in my dream house. I moved from LA, got this beach house on the ocean, and my lease was up for renewal. And I went to renew it. And and P.S., I made the promise to myself that that was the last home I was moving into as a single woman. Like the next home I was going to move into was going to be with my man. And so I go to renew my lease and she doesn't do it. She like accuses me of like basically crimes. I was just like, whoa, like what? Like just crazy stuff. She was a little off mentally. And I had to move out. And I really at that time was practicing letting my feminine lead and not going into masculine problem solving, fix it. And so I went into meditation. First, I felt my feelings about it, because that's the other thing about the feminine is like you allow yourself to feel. Yes. You don't indulge in them. You don't let them handicap you, but you don't go straight into what's the solution. You're like,
blocking them off.
Yeah. Like I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm shameful. I feel shameful. Whatever it is, like first I felt. Because if we don't feel our feelings, then our intuition is blocked. It becomes static.
Yeah.
And then the next thing was really, don't sign a lease. Don't control the situation. Like what I heard from my guides is we're up to something. And I was like, is that just my mind trying to reassure me, or is that actually accurate information? And when you're first tapping into your intuition, you don't really know. Like sometimes you're like, is that me just trying to make myself feel better?
Exactly. No, I'm like, is it just me because I'm trying to make excuses so I don't want to do it? Or it just genuinely doesn't feel right? I can't tell.
Exactly. But you can't, how I've learned to distinguish is I drop it into my body and I'm like, let me feel it in my body. And even if there's like fear, if it's true, I'll first feel a feeling of relief. And I know if I feel just a feeling of relief, even if it's for a nanosecond, then I'm accurate, right?
So what do you mean? If the feeling is, so say it's like signing a lease and you're thinking about it and you feel fear, then what do you mean? How do you know that that's the true?
I'll give you an example. So when I heard this, like, don't sign a lease, put your stuff in storage and just follow the breadcrumbs, like have no certainty. When that dropped in and I focused on it, at first I felt like, oh, I don't need to know right now. And then I was like, but if I don't know, my stuff's in storage and I bought new furniture and da-da-da-da. So it was like that, where am I going to go? What am I going to do?
Yeah.
I don't like living out suitcases. I'm a Virgo. I need to be grounded. So
but the initial reaction to that thought was relief. So that's how you know it's the thing to follow. And then it's the mind doing its crazy stuff.
Then the ego that loves certainty and loves control and loves to stay in our safe zone. Then the ego comes in and tries to talk us out of it.
Yeah.
And, this is another thing, masculine, feminine, where, women have been questioned and doubted and talked out of our intuition and our wisdom and the things that we know, like women know a lot, and men do too. It's just different. There's two sexes.
And men do too, but I also think that they need to tap into their intuition more too.
Totally.
See, this is really interesting because the last time we spoke was, I think it was either the spring or summer of 2017. And so this was sort of roughly happening around then. And something else happened, which was you are now engaged. And so you met a man around that time. So, so you listened, you put your stuff in storage, and then what happened? I'm so excited. This should be a movie. Your life should be a movie.
Yeah. So then the very next day, I met the man of my dreams. No, it did not happen. So this is the thing about surrender that I've learned, is that when we take a leap of faith, there's a free fall, and the free fall can be scary and bumpy. And oftentimes the universe needs time to get things sorted. So I put my stuff in storage. I always felt a call to Australia. I go to Australia. I had this guy there that I connected to last time I was there. And so I got this great month, and he was category, I don't know which I listed first, but he was the hot, charismatic, but totally like no emotional intelligence, not available, closed heart, commitment issues, all that kind of stuff. And I fell into that, but it doesn't matter, and I'm cool with the casual thing, and da-da-da-da. But that was the last time I played that out, and helped me get really clear, no, this is not what I want. And so I came back in March and just was like floating all around, and then went back to Australia in April because I'd work over there, and I still, every month I check in. Do I sign a lease? No. Do I sign a lease? No. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just go travel again. So I went back over there. And then in April, I fractured my foot. I came back in May. I had a sublease that was really dark and danky. I slipped into a little bit of a depression because I didn't like where I was living. I kept going, universe, like, this is so annoying. You keep telling me not to get a place, but I hate my home. I can barely walk. I can't exercise. Like, I threw myself a little pity party, which is okay too, but I kept surrendering, and I kept going into the feeling of, okay, like I trust, and following the breadcrumbs. And then in May, so this is like 5 months now, my friend calls me and she's like, hey, I know you're still kind of looking for a place. You don't know. We're moving out of our place in July. Why don't you come over and see it? So I brought them dinner that night to look at their home, and her husband was working on his computer with a startup called High Vibe. And he needed some pictures of the website. And so he asked me to sit and pretend I was using the website. I sit down at the computer, and on the website are the 8 people that work for the company. And I see this man, and I'm like, I know him. Who is that? And they're like, yeah, I don't think you know him. He lives in Perth. Like, this is his name. And I'm like, I don't know him, but I know him. Long story short, my friend introduced us. And P.S., she's like, let me find out if he's single. And I said, no. Do not find out if he's single. Find out if he's like calling in his person, like if he's emotionally available for a relationship. Because with me, it's so about timing. And if they're not like emotionally ready for a commitment, don't try to change that.
Yep.
So his answer was yes. He called me. We had a 2-month relationship over WhatsApp, videoing, really getting to know each other without the physical, because he was in Perth, I was in California. And then we met in Greece because I had said yes to a couples trip. Again, intuition. Someone invited me on a couples trip in February. I'm like, well, I'm single, but I'm going to say yes because that's my intention. And worst case scenario, I go alone. Like, whatever. There's cute Greek men.
Genius.
I invited him to meet me in Greece because he's half Greek, half Italian, but Australian. So,
oh, this is amazing. Yeah. So you meet for the first time on this couples retreat in Greece. Okay.
And like I was with like some of my like closest like heavy hitter friends. Like it was like it was an influencer group. It was, he had a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And I opened the door and we'd been talking over video, but we'd never like, hugged or kissed her. I didn't know what it smelled like or, and I opened the door and it felt like home. It was just like, wow, here you are. And just so we literally moved in together that day. We got engaged 4 or 5 months later and we moved into the house that I saw his picture on.
Wow. Wait, so your friend's house,
Yes, because they moved out and it just stayed available. And in September, when we came back from Europe and everything, it was still available. And we moved in to the exact house that was responsible for me finding him.
Wow. I love that story. I'm so happy.
Thank you.
This is fabulous. Okay, cool. This is exciting. I love that.
Yes. And I would love, can I share one more thing? Because this is, I think, useful for whether you're looking for a relationship or you're looking for a career or purpose, and it like totally goes along with desire. So this is another aspect of surrender. New Year's Eve last year, right when I was having to move out of my place, I left the party early. I came home. I sat out on the ocean and I said, okay, God, this is really hard for me, but I surrender my list of what I think my man needs to look like. Not just physically, but I had a list. This and this and this and this, because everybody says make a list. And I said, I give that up. You pick. Like you pick what I truly need. And I just wrote down a list of desires in terms of how I wanted to feel.
Yeah.
How I wanted to feel, nothing to do with him. And that was the ultimate surrender. And it was a scary thing because I'm like, well, if I really let the universe choose, I may not get this, or I may not get this, and I may not get this. And it was such a powerful choice to surrender that to the universe and just trust my desires and how I wanted to feel and let that lead me. And I think that's another thing when we're talking about feminine superpowers is instead of goals and plans and that 15, 20-year plan, I bet you can answer how you want to feel in 15 years or 20 years, and what you desire. Like, that's powerful.
Yeah. Yes. I've made that list before and I realized that the physical, it can be quite, because then you could be meeting the right person, but you're like, oh, they're not what I said on the list. And then you're sort of not. And so I've always been the same to feeling secure in the relationship, honesty, communication, like those types of things that are important rather than they've got this type of car. Who cares?
Yeah. And to feel adored, to be really specific, to feel like you can, be your most fullest you and shining your light and your most insecure and vulnerable you at the same time.
Yeah.
To just like to really think about how you want to feel on a daily basis. Like if you say secure, like what does that mean to you? Because it means different things to different people.
Yeah. For me, it's like, and I love that I'm just so happy for you right now. For me, it's knowing. Just I've had a lot of people that they're kind of in different places, or they're not really interested in a relationship and that type of stuff. And so it's not even like a physical safety. It's just more that we're doing this, and I'm going to communicate with you what's going on, and I want to be with you, and then just a knowing, a comfortable knowing that you're in it together and understanding, which is very simple, but it doesn't exist in a lot of relationships.
Yeah.
Or ones that I've had, and then when I'm unsure and I'm insecure in the relationship, that's when I act all crazy. Right. When I know that we're doing this, I'm the most chill, relaxed person in the world. But,
and that's another masculine and feminine dynamic. So the masculine holds clarity, right? The masculine is about clarity and commitment and all those things. And when the feminine has clarity, like she knows like where she stands and she has commitment, then she opens and feels safe and feels free. Right. So it's another thing. And, I'd hear so many dating advice of like, let the man pursue and he needs to be certain. And if you're more sure than him, then don't. And I was like, But having this experience and watching so many of my girlfriends who are with men and they're kind of waiting for them to become clear, it's torture. Yeah. And then they suffer because they don't they don't know where they stand, and they feel very wobbly, and they have to go more in their masculine energy because the masculine really isn't holding them. You know, so I think it's so important to know that like you have clarity and you have commitment, and then you can really relax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Christine, I'm really curious about doing your mastery course, and it's something that you're running right now. So can you tell us about that, please?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking. So I call it personal mastery because I truly believe when we become more masterful with ourselves, then life truly does get so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Things flow. We're not attracting things from our wounding or our limiting belief or our model of our world that got formed by what we saw from our parents. And so personal mastery is able to get a course that gets you super, super, super clear about who you really are, what you really want, and then how to get it. And we do that by eliminating the emotional, mental, behavioral, and spiritual roadblocks. So it's divided into different modules. The first is really dealing with your emotions and going back to kind of unresolved issues you haven't dealt with and learning how to actually release your emotions rather than recycle them. And then the mental section looks at your limiting beliefs, your model of the world, the stories we create. Because, oh my gosh, we could have one person, our parents could have said to us once, be quiet, when we were singing and self-expressing. And in that moment, we formed the belief it's not safe for me to shine. It's not safe for me to sing. It's not safe for me to self-express. So we find those, we update them. And then the behavioral, we look at the compensatory strategies and the avoidance traps and all the ways our unconscious drives us and how we can have more of our conscious mind and our desires actually drive us. And then the spiritual section is, yes, about spirituality and connecting to that, but also looking at life from a more spiritual psychology lens, like really becoming a seeker and looking at what your soul curriculum is. Because I think that the lessons and the challenges we've learned in life have a direct correlation to how we make impact and what our purpose here is. So it's a deep dive course. You get coaching with me. Every month, there's a live group coaching call. There's Facebook Live. There's a lot of support. I have coaches in the program. I just love it.
That's awesome. And so is it an ongoing thing, or does it start
It's ongoing. It's ongoing because I used to do the whole launch model, and then I'm like, I hate this. I hate the sense of urgency. I hate that you can only join once a year. I get super stressed out. I just want it open and available. And if it flows for someone in November or someone else in July, then join.
Cool. And so is it like an ongoing thing? Is it like a 4-month thing?
So what you do is there's 5 modules, and you get the modules mailed to you. You get access to the back end course where all the videos and audios and worksheets and all that is there. And you go through it at your own pace, however you want. And then the Facebook group is ongoing. And then every month we have a monthly group coaching call where I come on, I teach for a little bit, and then I just take your questions. So people can be at different areas, but it's great because somebody can be stuck I'm like in the emotional module, and we'll post something on Facebook, and other graduates or coaches will come on and talk about it. And then every year I have a live event that's totally free for people to come to as well for all mastery participants.
That's fantastic. Okay, cool. I'm going to be applying for this. I'm definitely very, very curious. And you also have a fantastic podcast. How's that going? You're Over It and Under It podcast.
Yeah, I love it. I coach people live on the air. That was another intuitive thing where I got the guidance, and then, the mind ego was like, well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to record calls? Who's going to do it? Are people And so it I waited for 2 or 3 years, pushing to the side. And then finally, I took action. But it's beautiful. People come on and they share such vulnerable things. And, I've learned that we learn so much from hearing someone else. Like when I hear someone else share and be coached on something that I didn't even know I had an issue with, and I get insight from them, it's like my defenses are down. So listeners really learn a lot about themselves, and I share some valuable tools in that. And I love it. It's such a blessing.
I really enjoy listening to it. It's a great one. You're very good at coaching. Christine, thank you. So good to be talking with you again.
Thank you.
Yes, I will have links to all of Christine's, the mastery course, her website, her fantastic podcast in the show notes. So please be sure to check that out.
Yes.
And
I also have a retreat coming up for women that's all about stepping into your feminine power. It's a 2.5-day retreat in beautiful San Diego and Paradise Point. we do like a massive grief release. We do an anger burn. I know that might sound scary to people, but honestly, for women, getting stuck emotions out of our body, whoa, it's like super liberating. It's a highly experiential retreat. We don't do anything super weird or scary. Sometimes when people hear women's retreat, they're like, oh God, are we going to like get naked and run around? And I'm like, no, it's all like super loving and compassionate and wonderful. And it's probably the most powerful in-person work I do with people. I've been doing it 10 years. And we actually take before and after pictures of people who come because physically people look different because they let go. So
When is this? When is this happening?
This is in March in San Diego.
Oh, that's soon. Okay, cool. Fabulous. Great. Oh, and also to let you know, we're also giving away, you've offered to give away a digital download of Meditation RX. So thank you for that. Guided meditations to treat your mind and heart. So
my pleasure.
I'll put the link to sign up for that in the show notes. Thanks again. It's great to be doing this and chatting to everyone again. So hello.
So great to connect with you. I love what you're doing. I love just the authenticity that you're putting out in the world. Thank you for choosing to shine your light, because it's not always an easy choice.
It's not. And it's interesting because I feel like I've been dimming it myself lately, and just sort of holding back from just speaking. I've noticed I've not been doing very many Facebook Lives to the audience, not many videos. And so that again is something that I constantly get feedback that I'm good at, and just sort of shutting myself off. I'm like, this just needs to stop, just kind of speak it uninhibitedly. I'm working on that. But,
and sometimes, it's like, be gentle with yourself too, because sometimes those times of more quiet, hermity archetype actions are because like there's an up leveling going on, right? And so that's okay too.
Yeah. Thank you.
My pleasure. So good to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, everyone. Thank you. And I'll be back next week with another episode. Take care. Bye.